It's the weekend and you have financial questions that need answering. That can only mean one thing. It's time for Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome, welcome. It is December, ladies and gentlemen. You can't hide it. I know, shortened holiday shopping season. Seems like that didn't really hurt anybody as they went out last weekend in droves, or at least went online in droves. This is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life, and we are broadcasting live from the Capital One studios. Capital One, what's in your wallet? You know, last week was just Giving Tuesday, right? Did you get slammed with all of those asks? Don't forget, charitable scams on the rise. Big time. It's amazing to me. People are continuing to give out their personal financial information. They hear, charitable organization. They start doing it. Okay, so scam artists, they know this. Scams that occur in the wake of natural disasters, those are big. Scammers maybe use a word that sounds like a charitable organization, but it's not a real one. So if you are getting inundated with requests, I'll tell you what you should do. Go to the IRS. They've got an exempt organizations tool. You want to make sure that that organization is a registered public 501c3, that they've got a legitimate IRS employer identification number. All right? Very important. All right. And by the way, just one more thing. If you have some questions about how much of your money is going to the organizations, Better Business Bureau's got the Wise Giving Alliance, Charity Navigator, Charity Watch, GuideStar, GiveWell. These are all places that can help you out. All right? Get that giving going. We like to start off with a call, so let's do it. We have got Erin from Salt Lake City on the line. Hi, Erin.
Hi, Jill.
Tell me what I can help you with.
Thank you for taking my call.
Of course. What can I do for you?
So I'm wondering about whether it makes sense to convert some of my traditional IRA into a Roth and the tax consequences or benefits
Okay, great.
of that.
So tell me a little bit about yourself.
We are retired
Mm-hmm.
and 64.
And you said we, so you're married.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
There's a we
Married.
there.
We
Okay.
file jointly.
Okay, good.
I've looked at filing individually, and that's not beneficial at this point.
Yeah, it never really is, actually. Very rare instances. Tell me, what is the income that you're living on?
About $80,000 a year taxable.
And is that likely to remain about the same going forward?
Yes.
Okay. So how much money do you have in the traditional retirement environment?
There's about 600 in traditional retirement. Sorry, 850.
850.
850,000 in traditional retirement.
Yep.
1.3 in non-retirement investments.
Okay, that's great.
Okay, so we have 750 combined in Roth.
Great. Okay, fantastic. In terms of the income that you have, that 80 grand a year,
Yes.
is that enough for you guys to live on? Are you pulling a lot more money out of your retirement account to supplement that, or does that include some
No.
money you're pulling?
No, we're not using any of it.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. You got some kids, you got some grandkids. What's going on that front?
No,
No.
none of the above.
I love that. That's why, you know what? That's why you have so much money and you seem very calm.
I just heard a funny line the other day on TV. Somebody was, I don't even know what it was. I don't know if it was a commercial, but this guy said, "Okay, I'll have children when I tire of having free time," and it made me.
That's awesome.
So we do support a fair amount of charity.
Oh, that's
work
great.
Financially.
Okay.
Which is sort of our goal, and we set up our estate
Excellent.
to support that.
Excellent. Now, tell me this. You own a home?
Yes.
Okay. Any mortgage that it's outstanding?
No.
You going to plan to stay in this house for a while?
Yes, I think so.
Oh, you don't sound happy about that.
Well, it's more than we need, but the reality is we know what we have.
Okay.
So
how much is it worth, would you figure?
$500,000.
Okay, great. Well, okay, here's the good news. Most of the income that you have, married filing jointly, is being taxed at, around 12%. Married filing, right? Okay. So then the next chunk of money is at 22%. And I would suggest that you may want to begin to convert some of this traditional money into Roth, but maybe you don't have to go so fast because, I mean, look, the 22% tax bracket goes up to about 165 grand. So essentially you could say, okay, I've got 850 grand in traditional. Maybe I could convert, enough to keep me in that 22% tax bracket. I mean, you could go up to 24%. I could almost make an argument that 24% on that income is pretty cheap as well. But maybe just a little bit at a time, and you look at 22% tax. You pay the tax with the money that's in the non-qualified assets. And you basically, this is like a tax arbitrage. Essentially, you're betting that the 22% tax bracket that we're going to have for, I guess, another 6 years is lower than you might pay after that. And that's why you would convert it. And if I think that is a fair assumption. I really do. Every single expert that I speak to around taxes and retirement accounts thinks that this is the best time to convert into a Roth environment. Now, the one thing I would say is that, you don't have to kill yourself either. You're in a great shape. You're not touching this money. So you're just maximizing the tax bet more than anything else. So I think that would be my suggestion. And then, if you ended up, let's say 5 years from now instead of having 850 in your traditional, you have half that much. That seems fine. And then you'll start taking your required minimum distributions at age 70 and a half. And I mean, I guess that in any given year, if you find yourself, sort of saying like, let's just do more of it, to pay a 24% tax also is no big deal. It really isn't. So I think that either way you do it, I think a little bit at a time, especially in the beginning, makes sense. I don't want to burn up all of your liquidity, in that non-qualified account. I don't want to cause you tax problems by you having to sell stuff in there. But maybe like a little bit at a time, you say, I'm going to do this. And of course, having a Roth is certainly a good asset to leave to someone who would actually pay taxes. The Roth, it would not necessarily be the best asset to leave at charity because they don't have any tax consequences, right? You're prepaying the taxes. So do you have anyone else you'd be thinking about leaving money to in terms of the down the line non-charitable?
Yes. Okay. Yes, we've split it 50% to family.
Okay. So those people would be very psyched to get a Roth asset more than any other asset because the tax been paid already. But again, I don't think that you're in, you don't have to do it all. And especially given your situation, I think it's like a nice thing to do, but I also wouldn't go nutty with it. I think you're in great shape. Keep doing what you're doing. And if you decide that something is going to change or you have some strange tax event that occurs that either has you go down in tax bracket or has you go up in the tax bracket, then you can always choose not to do this. But it's within your control. Go slow. I think you're in great shape.
Okay.
Okay. More of your calls, more of your questions when we return. Just send us an email, askjill@jillonmoney.com. And of course, you need some holiday gifts. Why not hop onto the website, jillonmoney.com, and buy my book, The Dumb Things Smart People Do With Their Money, 13 Ways to Right Your Financial Wrongs. Go for it. Do it right now, jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. Just a few weeks to go before the end of the year. And if you want to figure out what you need to do, hop onto the resource section at jillonmoney.com. We've got your year-end money moves. Or maybe you just want to give us a call. Shoot us an email. Ask Jill@jillonmoney.com. Let's talk to another one of you right now. We've got Gretchen on the line from Charlotte. What's going on? How can I help you out?
So my husband and I have been toying with the idea of when to sell our house, basically. So we bought in 2015. We bought it for $245, and we owe about $209 right now. I know this is not what you're supposed to to do, but we're trying to time the market basically.
I love that.
So that so that we can sell and get the most for, the most money for it. We tend to move around a lot, and so we're here in Charlotte for the next 3 to 5 years. And so after that, we don't know where we're going to go. So we don't want to be stuck with something that's underwater, basically.
I got you. What do you think it's worth right now, Gretchen?
So we asked our realtor to come over, and she said just, ballpark number between 275 and 285. So 2 other homes sold in our community for 285 and 286.
Okay. So let's just say that it's 280. How about that? Okay.
Yep.
And so you got 70 grand of equity or so. And what are you going to do when you sell this place? Are you going to rent?
Yeah, I mean, we would have to rent. We have to live somewhere, so we would have to rent. And we would probably put whatever we make off the house into savings until we find the next place that we want to buy and have money available for that.
How about any debt outstanding?
So I have student loans that I'm paying off that I would pay off by the time that we would sell within like 2 years.
What's the interest rate on those loans, Gretchen?
My interest rate is 5%, so it's a little bit high.
How much is outstanding? What remains?
60 right now.
Interesting how those numbers jibe.
Yeah. So, I'm making huge payments. We make decent money. We don't have any credit card debt.
Okay.
And we do have 2 car loans though.
Car loans. How much is outstanding, Gretchen?
So I just had to replace my car. My car, I have 25 on mine, and I think my husband has about 30 on his.
Okay. And are the interest rates low or high on those cars?
Very low. I mean, mine is less than 1%.
God bless you.
Yeah, I know. And my husband's is about 1.9%, I think.
Okay, sweet. Okay. And how much money's in savings right now?
So in savings, we have about 10 or 12,000 in cash, just in straight cash. We have about 60 in investments. And in 401, I think my husband has about 58, and I have about, 30 maybe.
How old are you guys?
I'm 39, and he is 35.
Okay. Kids? No kids?
No kids.
Okay.
We don't plan to have kids either.
How much money? So it's funny. So the 60 grand you have in investments, where'd that come from?
That's my husband's, and I think it's stocks.
Okay.
Sure.
And did he inherit that? Does he play on the side? What's his gig?
I want to say that he inherited that.
Okay. And how do you guys split the responsibilities? Like, for example, there are many couples where you say, okay, I've got 60 grand in student loans, and I'm going to just kind of whittle that down. Or do you guys sort of do it together? How do you manage this?
We do it together. So we pool all our money into our accounts, and then we just pay everything off of that.
Got it. And how much? You said you make good money. How much do you earn?
We make about 200 combined.
Are you guys maxing out your retirement plan or not?
I am. I don't know if he is. So I get 10% from my job, and then I put an additional 3%. And I want to say he does like 5% maybe.
You're kind of a little light on the putting money into your retirement.
Yes, we are.
Is that because you're putting all the money into paying down your debt, which you personally are doing? But what about, same for him, like we're putting all this money in towards the student loans. Has that kind of been the priority?
Yeah, that's been the priority.
How much are you going to have to pay in rent over the next 3 to 5 years?
So if we were to rent right now, if rent in Charlotte, we could get something decent for $1,200 to $1,400, which is basically our mortgage payment. I mean, that's what we would pay.
So awesome. Okay, so here's the deal. I think sell it now. No need to wait. I mean, especially because there's not a huge differential. Okay. And I would take the proceeds. First thing I would do is I would beef up your savings. You really do need more like 3 to 6 months of your expenses that's in the bank. Okay. So once you get that done, I don't know how much that is. I mean, do you have an idea about how much you guys do spend? Let's forget about the student loans for 1 second. How much money it costs you to live?
I would say like 5 or 6.
Yeah, I was thinking 5. Okay.
Yeah.
So
somewhere in that range.
So let's say out of the 70, let's get your savings up to 30 grand. Okay. Really boring. And I know that your husband has this money in investments, right? I would be very careful about maybe looking at that and saying, do I really want to keep this in individual stocks? We've got a lot of other things that are priorities.
Right.
It's funny, you're asking me about timing the market on the housing stuff, and yet you're not asking, and maybe he doesn't care, but like one of the things I would say to him is that, well, what about those investments? I mean, that's a great way that you could basically have a down payment or pay off student loans or do whatever you want. But like, there's this big pile of money that's sitting there, and it may be because, Nana always loved her ExxonMobil. I'm making that up. I don't know that, but like everybody has a story like that. And I think it's much more important for someone in your situation to say, look, we've got these assets. What's the best way to use these assets? And I would think that, if at the time you sell the house, maybe you look at some of the investments, you sell some of the investments. Maybe there's some that have big capital gains. That's why he's not selling them. But still, I don't know, like, big deal. So pay taxes on it. It's not that you didn't inherit it with a cost basis of zero. My guess is that he inherited it some time and they've made some money. That's great. Then my next on your hit parade is after you've replenished your cash and you have this money that's both from maybe the investments as well as the house. I would just get rid of your student loans in one fell swoop and forget about it. And now, wow, how great is that? Now all of a sudden you've got free cash flow. You both can put more money into retirement. You're not spring chickens anymore. I'm totally kidding.
Right.
You are spring chickens. But I would like it if both of you were putting away 10%. And you can't do 10% if you're trying to whack away at the student loan debt.
Right.
And so I think that, honestly, if I'm 39 years old, I actually really would prefer you to have 15%, but I want to give you a little flexibility. But, somewhere between 10 and 15%, you guys are making a ton of money. I also should point something else out. If I look at your tax bracket now, you are solidly in this 24% tax bracket. And I think that you're going to actually, you've got some room there, but I really think what's going to be helpful for you is to get some of that retirement planning stuff kicked up. I mean, you say yourself, like, look, we're only going to be here for 3 to 5 years. In 3 to 5 years, the next place you go, you decide you want to buy something, you'll still have some cash on hand. You'll still have cash, you'll still have investments. I think that if I'm in your situation, I really want to start to beef up my retirement assets. So maybe there's sort of like a three-pronged approach here. One is we get rid of our debt. 2 is we beef up our savings, emergency and regular savings. And 3 is increase my retirement contribution because you're going to have a lot of free money here.
Yeah.
So I just really feel like you guys are going to be able to do both plain old, like if we wanted to buy a house in 5 years, that would be fine. And again, as you say, you don't know where you're going to go. Maybe you're going to go to a market where the housing market is crazy and you don't want to actually buy. You want to keep renting. And I'm not doing this based on market timing, just for everyone listening, not for you, Gretchen. You know that. What I'm basing this on is where you are in your financial lives, because this to me is a great moment to kind of really turn things around. If you do that, you're not going to be worrying about what the housing market's doing. You're going to feel so comfortable. All right? Good. When we return, more of your great questions. So easy. Hey, by the way, you can follow us on all those social platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, everything out there. At Jill on Money is our handle. Okay, we'll be right back.
Do I invest here? Should I put my money there? Jill Schlesinger can help you. Back to Jill on Money.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. We are here trying to answer your financial questions. And if you do have something that's percolating, it's December, year end, give us a shout. Email us, ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Go to the website, jillonmoney.com. And if you're there and you're poking around, you're watching some videos, or maybe you're on the resource section because it's time for you to interview financial planners and you want to know the questions to ask. If you're there and a question does pop up, just click the contact button. It's in the upper right-hand corner and we can help you out. How about that? Easy. Okay, This is from Carrie, who is trying to get a position in a financial planning firm to build the experience requirement for the CFP certification. She also says, I want to learn how everything works together. I hope that will help me be more successful on the exam. Okay, so let's see. The question is, there are very few fee-only firms in my state of residence and fewer with women. I received interest from 2 different firms. They said I could come in and start gaining experience, but I need to spend a good deal of time drumming up clients and very little pay. One fee-based firm is interested in me and has more than enough work to keep me busy, learning and building relationships. This company would be willing to invest in me financially and help develop my understanding and career. I think all the firms would like to contribute, blah, blah, blah. What are your thoughts? Okay, long story short, I am very interested in fee-based firm that has more than enough work to keep you busy. So I would really do that. And as much, I think it's great that you're interested in trying to find a firm with women, but more importantly, if they're interested in you and they've got enough work to keep you busy and you don't have to get out there and start shaking the trees, which can really be a bit of a drag, I would go with a firm that's going to invest in you and go from there. Don't. It's very hard for you to be trying to solicit business when you don't really know anything. So you learn from the place that will invest in you. That's what I would do. Kimberly has been part of the public school loan forgiveness program for 3 years. Each year, my monthly payment increases by 30%, and it will soon be larger than my mortgage. Oh, God. I have my grandmother home. I have my grandmother's home, and it's sold after inheritance tax and fees. I have enough that it will clear my $157,000 loans that are outstanding. Should I do that or pay the loan with 30% increases each year? I need more information because I don't know what else is going on in your financial life. I don't know whether you are planning to really stick around in the public sector for the full 10 years that you would need. I mean, my inclination, of course, is to say, yeah, definitely, try to get rid of that loan. But if that's all the money you have in the world, I'm not so sure. So can I have some more information, please? Juanita writes, I just learned that my 401k has been unmanaged since I left the job 3 years ago. It must be the old company recently contacted her about charging them to manage it. Okay, I just turned 65. I want to know, should I let them manage it? No, don't pay for anything. So what you should do is you should roll over this money into an IRA rollover account. And you don't need to pay anyone to manage your money. You can do it yourself. You can open up that account at Fidelity. You can open up that account at T. Rowe Price. You could open up that account at Vanguard, anywhere like that. Don't pay. You don't need to. Raymond writes, wondering about your thoughts on single premium annuity with long-term care insurance rider, pros and cons. One of the few times I'm actually interested in an annuity is when it has a long-term care rider, because sometimes that's the only way you can actually get long-term care coverage. Need to know much more information about your situation. So if you could follow up with me, tell me a little bit about what else is going on in your life, what other money you have, other investments you have, that would be really helpful. Okay? Okay, here's James, who writes, what is the easiest way to get rid of a fully paid, no mortgage timeshare? Oh, listen to this. Purchased in 2010 by my now deceased brother-in-law. It's never been used. My sister's 75 years old. She's on a limited income. She's been paying the annual fees since it was purchased. Annual expense is $1,900. Hey, Jim, there are some secondary markets out there for timeshares, and you could just blow it out and make it, try to just take anyone who will, bid on it. Have you investigated whether they'll buy it back at a reduced fee? These timeshares. You know what my mother-in-law said after my brother-in-law bought a timeshare? Timeshares are for suckers. Very famous. Okay. Here's a guy who is 40 years old, married, 2 kids, being relocated to Kalamazoo, Michigan. They work. So far, so good. Company offers a match in a 401k. Should I take that now, do something else. No, do the match. Use the match. Use the plan you're in. That's what you should do. No need to do this on your own. Never forego a match. It's just, it's free money, essentially. Okay? All right. What else do I have here? Mark, there's a lot. I'm trying to get through. Renee, my daughter, she writes, my daughter has debt, school loans. She got sick. She can no longer work and finish her education. Should she go bankrupt and get rid of the debt? Mark's giving you a thumbs down. Poor Renee. Bankruptcy will not release you from the obligation of a student loan. You should go to the student loan provider, explain the situation, and see what you can do. I mean, you could default on it. It's just that, you're never released from it. That's just so awful. Okay, and before we go to break, here is a note from Jared, who has been listening to the podcast from the inception. He's got 3 young children, 6, 4, and 2, have started saving for college. All 3 have Coverdell savings accounts. This year, my wife and I reached an income level where we can no longer contribute to the Coverdells, so I contribute to a taxable account for more flexibility. Am I making a mistake by not using a 529 plan? Yes, use a 529 plan, for sure. I mean, I'm presuming you've got other areas of your life taken care of. You're putting money into retirement. You've got a beautiful emergency reserve fund. But yes, a 529 plan is a fantastic way for your family to save for college and maybe even private high school, because in some places you can do that after the tax law changed. Okay, you're listening to Jill on Money, and if you've got a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. And during the break, if you're looking for a holiday present, go to jillonmoney.com. You can buy my book, The Dumb Things Smart People Do With Their Money, 13 Ways to Right Your Financial Wrongs. We'll be right back.
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, she's all over the place. Go to jillonmoney.com to find it all. Now back to the show with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are here banging out some of your financial questions. The email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. Gina writes, so much to ask, the most important. When do I know I need a financial advisor? I've diversified enough. I'm not sure I'm doing the right things. Help me. Hey, Mark, what about the questions to ask before you hire a financial advisor? Or what about wondering if you might want to just buy the book, which I do lay out when people need financial advisors. If you need a financial advisor, as I mentioned right before the break, a good place to go is napfa.org. You can go to letsmakeaplan.com. That's the CFP website, so check it out. Okay, question. This is for after I did a segment on CBS this morning about cutting the financial cord. Watching your piece on CBS this morning, I wanted to share what we did with our stay-at-home son. When our son lived at home, we required that he pay $400 a month rent. The deal was we would give him a check for all the rent that he paid when he moved out. I periodically gave him a statement showing his rent payments and what he could have if he moved out. We playfully called it the Son Freedom Fund. While he moved out more Well, he moved out to to be closer to his job. That's an hour's drive. I suspect that once that balance gets to $4,000 or $5,000, it gives a child a powerful incentive. We love our son. Having him living independently is wonderful. We're proud of him. That's a cool thing. What do you think, Mark? I want to keep the money. That's good. You got to give him the incentive. My spending, this is from, James. My spending plan in retirement is to draw 4% a year. It's a little aggressive. I hope to maintain the initial portfolio. He'd given me the whole deal about what he's doing. Anyway, question is, what are my thoughts? I think that 4% is too high a withdrawal rate. That's what I think. So I would say this. If you go down to 3% or 3.5%, that takes the pressure off of you to really maintain a portfolio with a lot of risk in it. And I think that if you can maintain the risk and you don't care, that's fine. But I will tell you that It is very difficult to maintain high risk levels as you get older. Ron writes, my wife and I worked for different companies. Her company has an HSA. My company offers an FSA. We've been told that only one of us can participate. I don't know that. I didn't know that. That is news to me, but I will tell you which one to use. It's very easy. HSA. Use the HSA. It's much better, more valuable. It will do more for you over time. I don't even know if it's true either, but I'll tell you that. Here is an email from Robert who feels that they are been punished for doing the right thing. They were denied financial aid because they saved too much. What do you think we should do? Yeah, I've heard about this a ton. I don't know. There's not much to do. The situation is really tough. If you have saved too much money or make too much money, you can find yourself in this donut hole, which is really pretty vast. So anyway, I think that would be, you're going to pound your head against the wall. Tell your kid to go to a cheaper school, I guess. I don't know. Tammy writes, 59, I just lost my husband. Oh, no, that's terrible. We had no savings or investments. We do own a home, has $275,000 in equity. I'm renting it and making $12,000 annually. I'm about to go to work. We'll make about $50,000 a year. I'm grieving pretty hard. I understand I have to get moving in the right direction. I'm not sure it makes sense to rent it, although, I mean, if you just lost your husband, I don't want you to do too much. You know what? You do the best you can do in this situation. I think you may want to consider down the line whether you should be selling that house and just renting and then moving on from there. That's so terrible. I'm so sorry. It's awful. Last question from Ken. 69 coming up on his required minimum distributions. He's got an IRA a couple different places. He was planning on the withdrawals from one account to satisfy the required minimum distribution. Now I hear I can't do that. You don't have to take distributions from both IRAs. You don't. You can take one for both of them. So yes, that is correct. You do have to make it separate if one is a 401k. But as long as these are IRAs, you can take one distribution to cover the RMD for the total amount. Okay? There you go. All right, Mark, I think that's it. That's the end of this one, eh? Very good. Almost a minute left. Let's see. Medicare, so many Medicare questions. This is just comments that just basically Medicare D. Medicare has allowed insurance companies to change the tier. Yeah, there's so many things about Medicare that are bad, and the drug companies, the insurance companies, and everything. It is a system, and there's a lot of rants that I've received about this, and I get your rants. So let me also say, I understand this. However, you can rant to me. There's nothing much we can do right this second. It's the system we have today. Okay? All right. That's it. That's the segment. You're listening to Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, just send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. And you can always hop onto the website, jillonmoney.com. And there you can subscribe to our sister podcast, and you can read and listen and watch and check out our resources. Mark's always adding stuff to the resource page, which is fantastic. Okay. Stand by. Going to pay some bills, and we'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money. We are closing out hour number 1 from the Capital One Studios. We broadcast live from the Capital One Studios. What's in your wallet? Okay. Ralph writes, I've spent my working years accumulating retirement assets, but now I don't know how to draw them down. You know what? It's funny. The subject line is the opposite of accumulating. You'll be happy to know, Ralph, there's a term for it. It's called decumulation. In other words, how do I take the money out? So Ralph has 60% in stocks, 20% in bonds, 20% in cash. What is the strategic way to sell my assets each month so I can follow the 4% rule? 4% is basically It basically is a guideline. It's not a rule, but essentially it's if you take 4% of your portfolio value out on an annual basis, then you should not run out of money. But I think that's actually, you don't need to do, I'd rather do 3.5. Okay. The question here, they're all in various stock and bond index funds. What's the best order of liquidation? Do you have them send your dividends and capital first? What do I live on? Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Ralph, who says, P.S. I enjoyed your book. What I would do is, I think he says, I'm 62 and I plan to retire at age 66 and I will need 4% of my nest egg to live on plus Social Security each year. If you really need that 4% so much, I might work one extra year and see what that does to your retirement plan. I also would say this, Ralph, this is such a big decision that I would encourage you to get some advice. And maybe you go to a fee-only planner. Maybe you go to talk to somebody about what might work best for you. I'm concerned that we don't have enough information to give you a real good appreciation for how important this decision is. There are very few rules of thumb once you are retired, and so much depends on kind of your personality type. So that's what I would do. Okay, and last but not least, Tricia says she wants a second opinion for a CFP. And so what I would say is that you should get on the air with us because I want to talk to you about what you really think your needs are in terms of the kind of advice you should get on an ongoing basis. So fee only can mean you pay a certain percentage of assets under management or a flat fee, just a dollar amount. But I want to know more about you, Tricia. Thanks for giving us a shout. Let me know. It's Jill on Money, and when we come back, we're going to get to a fabulous guest and more of your questions. It's Jill on Money. We'll be right back.
It's the weekend, and that can only mean one thing. You're listening to Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Okay, it is hour number 2 of Jill on Money, and we are broadcasting live from the Policy Genius Studios. Policy Genius is the easy way to compare and buy insurance. Just go to policygenius.com. Check it out. Kind of cool. All right, for our guest today, we have an interesting guy. I really like this interview. His name is David Epstein. And the name of the book that he wrote is called Range. And it kind of flies in the face of conventional wisdom in that his thesis is that it's not specialization that leads to success necessarily. In fact, it's really about kind of being more open to other things. And he starts the book with a cool story about the difference between Tiger Woods and Roger Federer, and how that's an example of, while one was able to specialize early and it served him well, the other one didn't. Now, he takes this into other parts of life, which can't just be for sports, right? Because then you have no application. Well, none of us are professional athletes. Although, if you're a professional athlete and you're listening, feel free to give us a holler. We'd love to talk to you. I think this is good because we talked about how a liberal arts education can be helpful, but this is really about what kind of things you can do in your work life, how your training can help contribute to a broader range of views, and that can make you more successful. So, without further ado, here is the beginning of our interview with David Epstein, the author of Range. David has written a new book. It's called Range, Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World. And as somebody who is a generalist, of course, I was immediately drawn to anything that reaffirms my thesis on life, which is know a little bit about a lot of stuff. So, David, you previously wrote a book called The Sports Gene. When you were lecturing about that book, something else came up. So talk about the reason you wrote this book and how it came out of the sports studies.
Right. So in some ways, I'm glad this sort of affirmed your thinking because this project sort of began with something that overturned some of my thinking. I was in the sports world where the so-called 10,000-hour rule, this idea that early specialization and in highly technical practice and whatever you're going to do is the route to expertise. And after writing a little bit about talent in sports, I got invited to debate the writer Malcolm Gladwell at the MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference, which was founded by the general manager of the Houston Rockets. And it was set up as 10,000 hours versus the sports gene. Even though we have some middle ground, this sort of talent versus practice thing. Malcolm's very clever, and I didn't want to get embarrassed, and we'd never met before, so I kind of tried to anticipate what he was going to argue. And I figured he would have to argue that athletes should develop as early as possible, get a head start in technical training and whatever they're going to do. So I went and looked at all the research I could find that tracks the development of athletes, and in fact found that athletes who go on to become elite have what scientists call a sampling period. Early on, they play a variety of sports, they gain a breadth of general skills, they learn about their interests, they learn about their abilities, and they systematically delay specializing until later than peers who plateau at lower levels. And so when it came to the debate, and Malcolm sort of said, look at Tiger Woods, and I said, well, look at Roger Federer, who sampled and didn't specialize until way later than his peers. And the question really is, which of these models is the norm? And here's what the data says. That the Roger model is the norm. We just don't really acknowledge it. And afterward, he sort of said, what you got me on was that Roger versus Tiger thing. We sort of became running buddies and would talk about it on our own time. And that lodged in the back of my head. And sort of another experience where I was doing some work with a foundation kind of brought it back to the forefront. I said, this is a project I need to do.
Because you open the book with the Roger versus Tiger thing, and you talk about what ultimately becomes a real difference in what they are doing. Because golf is a sport that the ball's not moving.
Right.
And it's a series of repetitive actions, strokes that you do have to master, right?
Right, absolutely.
And tennis, though, is a more dynamic sport.
Yeah.
And so is that the reason why the sampling or the early focus is not as important?
That's a great question because the answer is largely yes. So in golf, there's kind of a dearth of data in golf, but I can absolutely believe that early specialization does work for golf because it is like skill acquisition scientists who study it classify it as almost like an industrial task. It's non-dynamic. People wait for each other to take turns. You don't have any teammates you have to deal with. You're basically trying to recreate known motions with as little deviation as possible over and over and over. And that's a very poor model, not only for the rest of sports, but certainly for most other things that humans want to learn. Whereas in these more dynamic sports like tennis, where you need what's called anticipatory skills, the reason these athletes seem like they can react so fast is they've actually learned to pick up on body cues very quickly that tell them what's coming before it happens. And it turns out to build the scaffolding that helps you acquire those skills, you actually want this incredible breadth of challenges early on instead of this focused practice. And so I think golf, we should sort of drop it as Tiger Woods is the most famous development story maybe ever. But it turns out to be a uniquely poor model from which to extrapolate to other things.
Are there any other sports like golf where you would see that kind of early focus would pay off generally?
Yeah, I would think like targeting tasks maybe, something like archery and shooting and things like that where they are static, where people, again, wait to take turns, where you don't require anticipatory skills.
But also in certain careers it would make sense. We'll get to that in a second.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just go back to sports? So you're now a new father.
Yes.
How do you feel about all these people who have their kids specialize? Let me just speak from personal experience. I grew up in a time where you did not devote all of your time, energy to one sport.
Mm-hmm.
So, I played soccer and basketball, and then a generation after me, or even a half a generation, all the kids were like, no, I play soccer, I play indoor soccer, and then I play spring soccer, and then I go to summer league.
Right.
So the parents have adopted that. Is there any shift in that now, or is it still that way?
I would say it's shifting in the wrong direction for the most part in this country, but in the right direction in some other countries. And that isn't because, the science is clear. The way the sampling period for all dynamic sports is totally the norm. But there are other forces at work here, right? Like youth athletes are customers for adults who have a very significant financial interest in keeping them away from other sports, right? When I lived in Brooklyn until recently, there was a U6 travel soccer team that met across the street from me. I don't think anybody thinks 5-year-olds can't find good enough competition in a city of 9 million people. But it's you convince parents, right, that, well, if they're not on the U6 team, they can't be on the U7 team. And so you start this deselection process early where they have to get in the pipeline. These are customers, right? Whereas I played football, basketball, baseball in high school and became a university record holder in track in college. And I was just talking to Steve Nash the other day, the 2-time NBA MVP. And he said he played basketball last. He didn't get a basketball till he was 13. And so he's exploring setting up an academy to incorporate what we know about optimal development. Unlike the U.S. where we have all these like balkanized youth leagues, everyone's doing their own thing. I get it, because if you're the 8-year-old coach, the coach of 8-year-olds, not the 8-year-old coach, if your incentive is to win the 8-year-olds championship, then fine, specialize those kids. But we know that the way to develop the best 8-year-old athlete is not the same as the way to develop the best 20-year-old athlete. But if your incentive is only for the 8-year-olds, that's a problem. So like in France, they overhauled their soccer development pipeline to incorporate sampling and unstructured play. But they made those youth coaches and said, your job isn't to win as an 8-year-old, it's to help us develop these 20 and 30-year-old athletes. But we don't really have that here.
We'll get back to our interview with David Epstein in just a second. While you're in the break, why not hop over to JillOnMoney.com? There you can watch all the different segments that I've done over the last few weeks. You can tell me how my hair looks in each one if you want. I mean, that's fine. Although I have a mother, so don't worry. I've got that all taken care of. Jill on Money. We'll be right back.
Do I invest here? Should I put my money there? Jill Schlesinger can help you. Back to Jill on Money.
You are back. It's Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. Here we are. We are talking to David Epstein, and the name of the book is called Range. And we started with our conversation about sports figures, which doesn't seem exactly applicable to the rest of us. However, one of the things that is really important is how to be more of a generalist and what you need to do and how you have to shift your attitude to be more of a generalist, which can serve you incredibly well. So as you start listening to this, maybe you jot down a note or two. You can always go back, but it's really interesting to me to hear how experts and pundits keep telling us about, why we need to specialize. Maybe you're telling your own kids that. It might not be the best idea. Maybe just being an attentive listener and being willing to go outside of your comfort zone is all you need. Here's more of our interview with David Epstein. Okay, so now let's move beyond sports into other areas where you were learning about specialization versus generalization.
Mm-hmm.
And so where did you go after sports? So this was your entryway in. What did you think about next for what would be a good test case?
Well, the first thing that came to mind after sports, frankly, was music, because having written in sort of that genre of performance books before, I realized that sports and music were kind of the most associated in public consciousness with early specialization. The Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother book starts on page 1 with promising the secrets to raising successful kids, and part of the list is about music. The daughters must play piano or violin. They can't play any other instrument. 5 hours of practice a day, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Later in the book, of course, the talented one quits. I knew that was a domain that I would be remiss not to take on if I was talking about specialization. So it was an obvious next step from sports.
There are some areas where it does make sense. So
Yep.
You're not saying don't practice.
Nope. Absolutely
and
not.
you're not. So I just worry that sometimes people are going to look at this and see and then all right, then I don't have to. No, you still have to bring your same discipline, but just to different things.
I think you just hit on one of the challenges for me as I talk about this book, which is differentiating what I'm calling a generalist here from just a dilettante who isn't that interested in or that good at anything, right? The kind of generalist I'm profiling here. And one of the reasons it's sort of late in the book that I start getting into scientists is because most people view them as the epitome of specialization, right? So I wanted to say, look, here are these people who have depth in an area for sure, and yet instead of getting deeper and more narrow, made their contributions because they harnessed this power of what I call range, even within what's normally a specialized area.
One of the things that caught my eye about this is that when kids or even adults are struggling to find an answer. Now, you have almost like an instant ability to get to the conclusion. But getting that conclusion without struggle is actually not advancing your learning. Can you explain that?
And this kind of gets to what I think is a theme of the book, and one that was deeply and counterintuitive to me, which is that practices and habits of mind that can cause the most rapid improvement, whether this is in your work, in sports, in music, or here just in learning generally in that chapter, can systematically undermine your long-term development. That's deeply counterintuitive, that you can see progress before your eyes and somehow that's undermining you going forward. So this actually gets to, I don't want to go too far aside here, but in that chapter is one of the studies that to me was the most surprising in the entire book, which was done at the United States Air Force Academy. And it was a study that you could not set up in any other way. So the Air Force Academy brings in freshman class every year. The students all have to take a sequence of 3 math courses, Calculus 1, Calculus 2, so on. And they are randomized to professors in Calculus 1, then they are re-randomized in Calculus 2, and then re-randomized again. So it's this incredible experimental condition, thousands of students, about 100 professors. What the researchers wanted to look at the impact of teaching. And what the researchers concluded was those teachers who taught the most narrow curriculum, the so-called using procedures knowledge, produced students who were really well prepared for that test, but then could not connect that knowledge to broader concepts going forward. So they were hampered going forward. And that's kind of a theme of this chapter where I talk about so-called desirable difficulties, where you actually want to put in the way of the learner these types of obstacles that cause them to be frustrated, that cause their learning to slow down, but builds this more conceptual scaffolding that allows them to then learn to stack relevant things in that framework going forward.
What does that tell you about the vast majority of, say, public school teachers who are teaching to the test?
It's a huge problem. I mean, what you're going to do is you will improve how students do on that test, but that's not really what you care about, right? What you care about is what psychologists call transfer, which is the ability to take that knowledge and apply it to situations you've never seen before. So one of the strategies in the book is called interleaving, which basically means instead of practicing the same thing over and over and over.
Look, I highlighted
there
interleaving.
There you go. So instead of practicing the same thing over and over and over, what you want to do is essentially diversify the challenges, like make the problems really different. This gets to a classic research finding I discussed in the book called breadth of training predicts breadth of transfer. The more varied your training is, the less you're doing the same thing over and over, the more able you will be to apply that knowledge to situations you've never seen before. And so we even think of things like professional development. When I've been through it, it's like, you get this like one bout of something that you kind of do over and over, and then you leave it forever. And the best way to do it is to be constantly mixing up challenges, which is frustrating, but helps your ability to transfer the knowledge, and then to incorporate spacing. You want to make it easy to make it hard on yourself while you're learning, and spacing is just what it sounds like. So in a famous study of spacing, Spanish vocabulary learners split into 2 groups. One group got 8 hours of intensive study on one day. The other group got 4 hours in one day, 4 hours a month later. Same exact total study time. 8 years later, when they were brought back, the group that had the spaced practice remembered 250% more with the exact same amount of practice. That's totally different than what we normally do in school or in work. You do a topic, and then you move on to the next topic. What you want to do is split all this stuff and mix it all together, which is frustrating, but forces you to build these more conceptual models that scaffold later knowledge.
I love that. Talk a little bit about how the generalization versus specialization, how that now translates into career. Because, I am much older than you are, but when I was brought up, it was sort of like, go get a liberal arts education, figure out what you want to do, and you might fart around a little bit and go one way or go the other way, zigzag, whatever. And now it seems that we are asking our younger generation of, let's say Gen Z or whoever comes next, to find specialization, like go to code camp, become a coder. What is the problem with that model, and what is the advantage of more of the generalist? Let's just call it there was a guy who wrote a book in praise of the liberal arts education. So give us both sides of that.
Yeah, and I actually decided that was Fareed Zakaria's book, and I decided to proactively stay away from that because I didn't want to prescribe a certain course, but rather that just people should be broad. And one of the main advantages, not that there's anything wrong with coding at all, one of the most important advantages has to do with what economists call match quality, which is the degree of fit between your interests, your abilities, and the work that you do. And that turns out to be incredibly important for your long-term motivation and for your productivity. And so, for example, one of the economists in the book decided to study specialization timing in colleges in different countries, and looking at some countries where students have to specialize earlier and some countries where students can experiment a little bit in college. And some of those countries have otherwise have similar education systems, like England and Scotland, where in England, students kind of mid or late high school have to decide what they're going to be doing in college. In Scotland, they can keep experimenting. And he said, who wins this trade-off? The early specializers or the late specializers? And it turned out it was the late specializers. In fact, the early specializers do jump out to an income lead when they graduate because they have more sort of specific skills. The later specializers who sample different things end up optimizing their match quality more, doing better, picking a better fit. By 6 years out, they have caught and then surpassed the early specializers in income, while the early specializers start quitting their careers in much higher numbers, because basically they had to choose so early that they made many more wrong choices. So I kind of liken it to, if we thought about careers the way we think about dating, and we spend as much time with our careers probably, maybe more, we would stop telling people that it's a good idea to pick something early and stick with it. Because as we know, once you get a little more data and learn a little more about the world, you can match yourself a lot better.
We'll get back to our interview with David Epstein in just a minute. Hey, you know what you might want to do during the break? Why don't you subscribe to our podcast? It is also called Jill on Money. You can get it on Apple, Stitcher, radio.com, Google Play, anywhere else that you find your favorite podcasts. We'll be right back.
(401ks, IRAs, refinancing, she covers it all. Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. And we are in the midst of our interview with David Epstein. He is the author of Range. And some of the things that he talks about in his book is so interesting to me, especially given that we are really the sum of all of our experiences. And I think that as you listen to the next part of this interview, which we start with my weird career, in planning your own path or trying to help your kids plan their paths, you may want to take a page out of David Epstein's book and really consider that learning itself, just learning, should be actually slow and hard. It should not be that you are moving along and quickly able to adapt. Slow and hard. And that may make your learning more valuable over time. Okay, here's our interview, the end of the interview with David Epstein. You know, it's interesting because when I go back in time, I started my career because my dad was a trader on the floor of the American Stock Exchange. My godfather was a trader on the New York Stock Exchange, which meant that in high school and summer and college summers, that's what I would do. And so, of course, that's what I did. I remember so, crystal clear memory that I built the proof of the thesis, Jill should become a trader, and I built the proof to support this idea. Then I got there, and I didn't really like it. I was kind of miserable. And so then I left the trading floor, and I went into financial planning, investment management. And I had a couple of dopey jobs along the way, but they were fun, and I did learn a lot. One was horrible and one was fun. I remember then saying, okay, well, now, I'm in my late 20s and I have to get serious. And so I'm going to pick a career called financial planning, investment management. And I did that for a number of years. And I thought, this is it. This is my life. But what I really learned, and as I now reflecting on it, those were great jobs for as long as I had them. But there were aspects of it that were terrible for me and for my personality. They really didn't match, which, I was over-involved. I got too emotional. I got worried when people didn't take my advice. I couldn't sleep at night because I thought oh my God, David didn't buy enough life insurance and he's not buying enough and now I'm worried and what happens? And all of that was just not a good match because I was so hyper about it. But I know that if you asked me 20 years ago, is this the career for your life? I would have said, absolutely. Let me tell you all the reasons why. So what can we do to kind of help people pick their heads up a little bit and reflect more in real time? Is that possible?
I think it is. And now the very lifeblood of what you're doing has to do with diverse interests and being able to ask. I mean, look at me. I'm probably an unusual guest for the things you're looking at, but you can still engage with these ideas in ways that are totally relevant to you and your listeners. And so I think the reflection in real time is absolutely real. and should be done all the time, right? Like this is old hat for elite athletes where they keep training journals. They start getting insight into themselves from like having to write things down. And so I do that for myself with all the work I do now. I mean, I call it a book of experiments, basically, based on Herminia Ibarra's work, because she says you should set up experiments of yourself where you have a hypothesis of here's the skill I think I'm going to learn, here's what I think I'm good and bad at, and then assess it like rigorously and objectively. And so I do that now. And the other thing I think is that we should not consider those experiences where you thought something was going to be your career and it isn't to be bad, because you will use that knowledge. It's not a sunk cost. Like, we're so obsessed with precocity, right? You look at like Mark Zuckerberg, for example, right? At 22 famously said, young people are just smarter.
Yeah.
And then there's just brand new research from MIT, Northwestern, and the Census Bureau that shows that the average age of a startup founder of a blockbuster startup on the day of founding, not when it becomes success, on the day of founding, is like 46. They usually have to zigzag a lot first, but just like the Roger and Tiger story, it's only the tiger one that gets told, even though those are the exceptions, not the norm. And so I think we sort of need to drop that obsession with precocity and get to zigzagging and realizing that the zigs and the zags, in addition to getting you towards your match quality, provide you with this breadth of skills, and the world's changing, and breadth of training predicts breadth of transfer.
And that's why it's very interesting, because I find that older employees, so when I owned my financial planning and investment firm, I found that the older employees were so much more interesting and actually valuable, because what they were able to do essentially was bring all these different life skills to their clients, right? And really talk to them and understand them. Because even if you were the smartest 29-year-old certified financial planner, simply because you're 29, you are not going to be able to do what someone who's 59 can do.
That's right. Young people do score better on tests of so-called fluid intelligence. You actually don't really care about that. Like that's useful for rapid learning of certain things, but when it actually comes to doing the job, you care more about crystallized intelligence, which is like actually knowing things and having actual scaffolds for knowledge that you can fit new problems into. And older people do better on crystallized knowledge, which may seem like less sexier, but is actually what you care about when you're doing the work.
Another part of range deals with people who are, let's say, specialists.
Yeah.
And their ability to maybe look at what could happen in the future. And they do kind of sell themselves. All the time I get pitched like, well, Joe can come on your show, and Joanne can come on your show, and she'll tell you where the market's going next.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So this is the topic of Chapter 10, this political and economic prediction. And unfortunately, it's probably a pretty good heuristic that if they're getting pitched to you, they probably are not good forecasters. They may have made a good prediction in the past, right? But there's not good accountability for all their bad predictions. Chapter 10 follows a 20-year study where a psychologist looked at expert predictions about geopolitical and economic phenomena. He had to get 82,000 concrete predictions, specific probabilities with end dates, because you have to separate luck from skill, streaks, so you need lots of predictions. And what he found was that there was basically an inverse relationship between confidence and, in many cases, credentials and forecasting ability. So the worst forecasters, what he called the hedgehogs, were people who had spent their entire career working on basically one problem and began to see every issue through that one lens. And so no matter what they were predicting, and they had so much information in that narrow lens or that narrow area that they could fit any story anytime to their theory. And they were such bad predictors that they got worse as they accumulated credentials. And not only that, when you make a prediction and it turns out wrong repeatedly, you're supposed to update those beliefs. This is Bayesian thinking for people who are familiar with that. The worst specialists, the most narrow specialists, would update in the wrong direction, where when they would get stuff wrong, they would reinforce their previous beliefs that sent them wrong. They would always just say, I was just wrong by a little, or the timeline was just off, right? This is what a lot of investment is like. I was right, the timeline was just off.
Right. I told you the tech stocks were going to sell off, but you told me 3 years before they actually did.
If the timeline is off, you are wrong when it comes to these sorts of things, and you're not accountable.
Thanks so much to David Epstein. The book is called Range. Might make a nice holiday gift, if you don't mind. A really good one. Just get it now, and then you can put it aside. Maybe you give that to your kids for their graduation or your own graduation. That'd be cool. Okay, it's Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, let us know. Could be a career question. Send us an email, askjill@jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
.401ks, IRAs, refinancing, she covers it all. Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. So, Mark, I left the gym. I'm done. All done. Saving that $2,000 a year? Yeah, baby. No. You know what I did? I'm in a private gym with the trainer for the exact same price. Because what you don't realize, if you have a trainer at one of these gyms, the trainers get paid bupkis on what you pay. So if you pay $125 for a session, they're only getting about half. Go to a private gym. I pay the same $125. $25 goes to the private gym just to get access to it. $100 straight to the trainer. Saved myself the $2,000. Got my Peloton app. I'm just using it. You think I'm cheaping out? I should just get the Peloton bike? But what happens if the Peloton bike becomes obsolete in 2 years? Then I've dropped, how much is that bike? It's $2,300 or something? $2,200. And then I'm screwed. I bought a piece of hardware that could be obsolete. I don't know, because there could be better technology. Just consider that. Marx has paid for it himself. I think you should share. I want to see your name online so I can see if you're kicking my ass on the rides with Wilpers. Okay. I did one yesterday. Those hills. Woo, 9-minute hill. Killer. All right. Greg writes that he loves the show, and he has been a saver all his life. And it's kind of great. Anyway, here's the stats. 55, married. Husband has a great job. We built our home together for $550,000. So Greg, being the saver, had the money to put in. He says, I put in $350,000. Husband is paying the $200,000 mortgage payment. Both their names are on the mortgage. They split expenses for the house. Greg says, it's funny how he's saying, I have no debt. We have this. You remember when Belinda Luscombe from Marriageology is sort of like, it's all the same. This is very separate, it sounds like. But okay. If the husband can't pay off the debt, I can with one check at the end of the day. Not worried. I'm a self-employed composer, musician, choral conductor. That's kind of cool. Okay. Joint checking. We each put $800 to cover basic living expenses. I keep a budget, and this amount works for most months unless our dog has expenses. Checking. This is for my personal expenses, phone, things that are specifically mine. Has about $2,000 every month. Vacation checking, put some money in there. Okay, you ready for the savings? Currently $195,000. It's rarely below $150,000. I pay quarterly taxes, which are significant, so I do keep this account heavy with cash. All right, seems good. House savings. I put away $2,000 a month into a house account. I can draw from this for any expenses that come up. Maybe something new for the house, too. I pay my portion of the property taxes each year from this account. We do not have the property taxes tied up in our mortgage. It allows us to see exactly what they are and if there's an issue, which this year there is. So, municipality assesses their home at $800,000 instead of their purchase price of $550,000. Yowza! That's a big difference. They're trying to work on it through the city. Good luck to us. Car savings. Well, what's this? He says, Jill, when I paid off a truck I bought in 2002, I decided to keep paying myself the car payment each month, which is $400 a month. In later years, I was able to buy my parents a new car for cash. I was able to buy a new car for myself 2 years ago. I drove the truck for 16 years. Amazing. So he's putting away a lot of money. And this is this idea of just sort of having separate accounts earmarked for very specific purposes. He's also got an HSA account. He doesn't contribute it to it anymore because he's on his husband's health insurance plan. But, he's got $28,000 in it, finding it difficult to invest through the company it is, but working on that. Special savings. This is inheritance money from my mom, $77,000. We're going to use this. Finally, retirement account. Got about $1.3 million, which includes $65,000 in cash as an emergency fund, income, blah, blah, blah. Am I saving too much? How do I let go and put more into investments? I started with nothing at 22. I've been self-employed my entire career. I may be addicted to saving? What do you think, Mark? This doesn't sound like you're saving too much. It's great. Like, who cares? Have you done actual retirement numbers? I would encourage you to do so. The retirement account would be interesting. Maybe that's in the retirement assets. This could be where you start investing. It does sound like you're a little cash heavy. On the other hand, I need to know more of the picture of the husband, what kind of retirement account he has. I don't have a problem with saving a lot of money. I think my big issue is, do you need to be investing some of your retirement money more efficiently? So I'd love to know how the retirement funds are invested. Greg, if you are not worried about maybe depriving yourself, it doesn't sound like you are, there's nothing wrong with this. I think this is all good. But I would be careful that you are not so cash heavy that you're missing out on long-term investment opportunities. That's what I would say. All right? Sound like a plan? Way to go. I like a question of, am I saving too much? It's a good one for us to field, and especially this time of year. And anyway, if any of you have any other issues that you need addressing, saving too much, spending too much, maybe you've got an opinion on Peloton versus flywheel. I did take a flywheel course recently. I still don't like being in public and working out like that. Not because I'm such a superstar, only because I don't know. I'm like very happy in my home. All right. We will be returning in one moment. During the break, go to the website, JillOnMoney.com, and why don't you read all the good stuff we've been writing, real good year-end stuff, some tips about charitable giving. Give it a shout. Give us a shout if you have a question. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are broadcasting live from the Policy Genius studios. Policy Genius is the easy way to compare and buy insurance. Just go to policygenius.com. Okay, Rose wants to buy a house, and because of the $484,000 ceiling on conventional loans, we need a jumbo. We were using a mortgage broker, but the rate she quoted seemed high for jumbo. She says the fees could be lower. We looked ourselves, and Ally Bank offers a much lower rate jumbo loan and low fees. It's not a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac insured loan. What's the catch? Are we okay to just get the mortgage with Ally? I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a Fannie or Freddie Mae insured loan. And to some extent, big deal. That's their problem, not your problem. You're borrowing the money. So I'll tell you what I would do. I would make sure that you looked around and thought, kind of made sure that there are no catches to this, but should be fine. It's an FDIC-insured bank. Don't worry about it. Okay. This is Robin, who said that my sister passed away and I'm receiving $3,500 from her life insurance policy. I would like to put the money into an IRA, but I don't know if one is better than the other for this type of money. My head is saying it has to go into a traditional IRA because I have not paid any tax on the money, and Roths are for money you have paid tax on. Is that correct? First of all, there's no issue on this. Life insurance proceeds are not taxable unless this life insurance policy was held inside of some sort of strange retirement plan, which I doubt. Then don't worry. You can get the money. It's free and clear. There's no income tax. And if there's no estate tax due, it's your money to do with as you please. But, Robin, the question is, can you put the money into a traditional IRA or a Roth just based on your tax status? You want to check the rules. And if you are looking at one versus the other, it's simply a question of whether you want to put money in that's already been taxed and not get a tax benefit today and instead not pay taxes in the future. If you want to follow up and send some more details about you and what's going on in your life, I'm happy to field them. But I think the big question is, if this money is just on insurance proceeds, go for it. You have just the plain old choice that you would have any other time. Okay, that's it. That's the program. If you've got questions throughout the week, don't forget, you can always email us, ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com, and hop on the website all week long, JillOnMoney.com. Fresh content goes up there all the time. So check it out and give us a shout if you have a question. All right? Do that and have a great week. We'll talk to you next one.